My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
John is a marriage and family therapist and owner of Summit View Counseling in Phoenix, Arizona. He offers compassionate and empathetic support to his clients who are experiencing relationship problems, impacted by addiction, and are seeking healing from past trauma. John also offers a safe space for those who are questioning their religious beliefs. John's approach integrates various therapeutic modalities tailored to meet each individual's unique needs. His goal is to honor the inherent value and worth of all people while helping them achieve their goals. Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you, John?
I'm good. Hi.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Well, thank you for joining us today and being open to having this conversation about the journey of your inner knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I reached out to you and asked you if you would consider having this conversation with us, do you remember what your reaction was?
I do. And I probably still have that reaction. It was, boy, I'm scared to death to do something like that, because the challenge for me is being authentic. And I can be authentic generally in most of my relationships, but in such a public format, it's quite vulnerable for me. So I get quite nervous about that. So I'm scared of it.
Oh, well, thank you for being brave and doing it anyway.
Oh, yeah. I figured this is probably something my inner knowing is telling me I really ought to move toward this rather than run away.
So when you say that, what's the sense, or what's your understanding, when you get that message that comes across, hey, I need to go towards this, and hey, I need to get my courage and go ahead and have the conversation. I mean, where do you feel it in your body anywhere? Is it some other sense that you get? I mean, what got you over that threshold to come here today?
The physical sensation is just in my chest. It just is this, it's like a balloon in there saying, oh, don't do this. It's sort of that self-protective part of me that says, no, you don't want to be that vulnerable with people. And, I've learned, just to sit with that for a little bit, not to react to it. I used to react very quickly to that. And I've been learning how to sit with that more and just let it be what it is. And then let myself kind of ponder sort of the pros and the cons, so to speak, of, is this good for me? Is it healthy? Is it dangerous? Is it damaging? And all of that stuff kind of gets synthesized over time. And then I can come to a better understanding of what would be best for me, not necessarily the right or the wrong thing, but the best thing. And so that's kind of what I did is, and it didn't actually take very long because, Teresa, I've known you for a while and I trust you very deeply. So that was helpful.
Thank you. So when you then considered the things that you wanted to potentially talk about today, what was that process like for you in getting clear on what aspects of your journey you wanted to share?
That was a bowl of spaghetti, because I don't really have any clear path here.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about inner knowing, it's still a journey that I'm trying to figure out. I don't have this clear, concise definition of what that is for me. It's more a work in progress. It's sort of like the scaffolding is all over this building, and it's just can't quite tell exactly what's underneath all that. But it's becoming a little more clear as I go along. But it's still, I think it's just going to be developed over the years. And so I really just jotted down a few thoughts about what I believe my inner knowing is and how that's been a journey for me to even tap into that, because I was taught really to not listen to that was actually untrustworthy and not good. And so dismantling that, and maybe that's one of the things that came to mind, is some of the hurdles I've had of trying to tap into that inner knowing, and some of the sort of monumental experiences that have come into my life that really shook me to have to really look at this deeply.
Yeah.
You covered a lot of ground.
You did. I was like, ooh.
Sorry. Yeah,
no, it's good.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Not at all.
It was so good. Where do you want to start?
Oh, well, why don't we start at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Because that's a very fine place to start. I like to say that, John. Haha.
It's true.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when we've touched on this with each other and with other people too, but it's like, I think it's not an unusual experience to have our innate wisdom, that we come in with as children or even young adults. I don't know where along the spectrum that was, you were taught that's not something you can trust, but if you can share like the first realization, that, yeah, it's not okay. Or if that's not safe for you, then move forward. And where it was, you realized, hey, I can start to trust myself.
Yeah. Well, I think not trusting myself was sort of an integral part of my growing up. And I can't pinpoint a time, really. It's just when I look at my childhood and my early years and even young adulthood, I don't have any specific time where I made a conscious decision of like, oh, you can't trust yourself. I grew up in a very religious or very Christian home. I had wonderful parents, loving, kind, present. But I was raised in this environment where the thing that you couldn't trust was your own intuition or your own thoughts, your own feelings. Some Bible verses that just kind of always come to my mind is, don't trust in your own understanding, that the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, and that I shouldn't really trust what's going on inside of me. And that was just sort of the tone growing up. And so there was no moment when I decided that. It was really just it's sort of like the ocean that I swam in my entire life, and never questioned it. Never thought that there was anything, different options. I never thought there was anything else to believe or think.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting, John, to hear you say those Bible verses, because I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic college, right? But for whatever reason, either they weren't teaching us Bible verses or I retained nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting because that is not the opposite necessarily, but that was ingrained in me, like memorizing Bible verses and reciting large portions of scripture was just sort of the thing that I did.
Okay.
And so all these, it's like these specific messages and specific versions of truth are kind of implanted in my memory banks that I can't get rid of. Like they're just there.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you say you don't have a lot of memories of those things, because I just have so many, and they're fading as time goes on, but
sure.
But they're very, very clear and very poignant for me.
Yeah. I mean, what struck me when you said that was just how it hurt my heart that those would be things that you were taught were true, right? To not trust yourself. I mean, I can imagine what that was about, but just as a child, when we have so much this natural curiosity, right? And for it to be so intentionally taken from us. I mean, the knowing that kids have about their own experience in their body is just so amazing to watch. I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy watching children learn who they are. But, yeah. Wow. Those are powerful verses to have still floating around in there.
Yeah. And I think the theme really that even in addition to not trusting oneself to listen to oneself, to, believe that I might have some valuable insight into my world. Really, I think one of the biggest messages that I picked up throughout those early days is that I am evil. I'm wicked. There's nothing good inside of me. The only good that could ever come out of me is who God is inside of me. And that me in and of myself is worthy of hell and destruction. And it seems so natural. Like I said, it's like the ocean that I swam in, and didn't seem unusual to me until only about 10 years ago, maybe. That voice, that message, that one, fortunately, is getting a lot less loud. But that has been a very important piece for me to confront.
Wow. God, I mean, it just is so hard to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just as a child. I mean, I just think about all the kids that I've worked with over the years, right? And I mean, really, like the worst thing we can be told is that we're a monster, right? And it's like, that's what came to me as you were sharing that. I'm a monster.
Yeah.
And we're taught to be so afraid of them, right? so
right.
I'm taught to be so afraid, of myself. Right.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh. That's a lot. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It really put a lens over my eyes, seeing the whole world, because, if I'm desperately wicked, but the whole world is desperately wicked. Like everybody that I see is also desperately wicked, just like me, and I'm special. I mean, that was one of the things that I think helped me feel better about me was that I was in the right religion, quote unquote. And I was told that because, I have this faith, because I know God and God knows me, that I'm okay, right? I'm okay because of what he did for me. And those other people out there, I mean, if they are following the same beliefs that I am, then they're okay too, but not in and of themselves, but it's because of what God did and because of what I believe about him. And so I had this sort of lens that I was desperately wicked, but I got sort of a pass because of what God did. But those other people out there who don't know God, they're desperately wicked. And so I really had a classification of people, that there's the good ones and there's the bad ones,
Yeah.
And it tainted my whole view of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it creating this duality, where we're not at one with our creator, it's hard. And this is it's hard to get into this sort of a subject just because it's so inflammatory for a lot of context, but it just is. Can you share with us that when you said about 10 years ago, this coming into this, your experience of recognizing I'm not, maybe, there doesn't have to be this separation, and maybe I can trust my heart, and I'm not essentially wicked. Facing down your own monster and realizing that it doesn't exist. Maybe. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, about 10 years ago, if I'm doing the math right. And it was actually the time when, Teresa, you and I had a lot more interactions. And I think I was just beginning to be confronted with the possibility that may not be helpful for me to look at life that way. At the time, my daughter was beginning to share with us that she had some attractions to women, that she was gay. And this was probably at the time one of the hardest things for me to hear, because in my religious faith, that was equated to being sinful and broken. And there was something deeply wrong with someone who was gay. And so that created quite a conflict for me, because I love my daughter. I loved her. I loved them so deeply, and couldn't imagine that this wonderful, amazing person was broken and evil, And so there was something inside of me that started to really feel like I might be looking at this wrong, and I might be seeing something different out there, a different possibility. It was sort of in that time period, and it wasn't an instant. It was just a gradual period of my life where I just started questioning all of the things that I'd been taught, and thinking internally, like, there is this little voice inside of me that says, there's something wrong about this. There's something wrong about calling her broken. And I couldn't put my finger on it, because there was so many clear messages that I had in my mind that I'd grown up with, that, there's Bible verses that we can point to. There are nature that we look at that says, oh, that's so unnatural. And all of these things that seem to be telling me, no, you need to stay in this, see things through this lens. But something inside of me kept saying, no, I don't think this is right. I can't put my finger on why it's not right. And that was the inner knowing, I think, that was it was knocking on the door. It was saying, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
But I was not wanting to listen to it, because, that would mean I would have to go against my entire community of people. So it was super scary for me to imagine.
I can imagine.
Actually listening to that.
Yeah.
But, I'm so grateful for the journey. And now my daughter at the time, a few years ago, came out as trans. And so I refer to them as they, them. But when I talk about that past time, it was my daughter. And I'm just so grateful for the journey that they've been on, which has been doubly hard for them. It's not about me, but their journey awakened in me this part of myself that I'd never really connected with. I started going on a journey of trying to figure that person out, that voice, that inside knowing.
Sure. Did you look to any resources? Was there I know there's no guidebook for what you're talking about, but there may have been some alternatives that, mentors or speakers or something that you turn to for just some guidance in that time, because it's a catharsis in a way, right? I mean, this is transformation.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many little instances in people, and, it's a journey. And even some of them, I would look back and say, yeah, that was really what I needed at the time, but it doesn't resonate with me now.
Sure.
But that's what I needed then.
Sure.
I just remember one moment that was very powerful for me was in Kansas City at the time I lived there. And there was a conference that was being held by Matthew Vines. And he wrote the book, The Gay Christian, or something. I can't remember the exact title, but anyway, it was a book about how can we possibly integrate being gay into the Christian faith. And I went to this conference, and it wasn't the content so much that really spoke to me. It was the people that I saw while I was there, and seeing all these people who just clearly loved Jesus, loved God, and they were just worshiping and raising their hands and praying, and, just all these beautiful things that I'd grown up with, seeing people just really have this heartfelt sense that they're connected with God. But they're all LGBTQ individuals who were sort of the outcasts of my community. And there was something that just spoke to me that, boy, that how can this be wrong? How can this be bad?
Yeah.
And I started really listening to, people who were in the Christian faith that were incorporating sort of this inclusiveness and love for the LGBTQ community, and like Matthew Vines and others, that just really opened my eyes to not the truth per se, but the possibility that there's another way of looking at this, that it's not necessarily that my way is the truth. And I'll be honest, Teresa, you can edit this out if you want to, but I'm going to say it anyway. You were very helpful in this as well, because I remember there was a time when I was very distressed about this. And I remember you sitting in my office. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. And I told you how concerned I was about this. It was really shattering my faith. And I think you just said, I wonder if there's a different way of looking at this. And it was just a curiosity, which I've learned to love that word, I think, because of you. But it was just this curiosity of, is there something else out there that maybe this is a good thing for you to be thinking about, and maybe opening some other doors to explore? That was very influential. Mm-hmm. You may not have even known that, but it's been very helpful for me.
Thank you, John. I'm glad it was a positive experience.
Absolutely.
Yes, it makes me emotional too. When we, and I've said this before in one of the podcasts we've published, which is that I feel like our children are our biggest teachers, right? For me,
yes.
The motivation to keep growing is just fueled by them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What we wouldn't do for our kids.
Yeah.
I can't think of a more powerful force than to love one's child, to drive you to do whatever it takes. It was that powerful force of love that I had for my daughter that got me started on the journey. And, and that, of course, that love for them is still amazingly strong. But that's not the thing that kept me on the journey, because almost everything about my faith began to unravel. It was like I was trying to hold on to. It's like, it's probably an overused metaphor, but the guys on stage, spinning the plates and trying to keep them all going. And it was like these plates just kept falling and falling and falling. And I kept like, there's something just starting to dismantle about my faith. And it was a little bit like, and this metaphor is always stuck in my mind, is I remember watching the Twin Towers and when the airplanes hit the towers, and it was such an emotional time. Yes. And we were all just kind of wondering what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And at some point, the towers just started to crumble. They just kept falling to the ground. And that's what happened to my faith. These things just kept hitting my faith. And at some point, I'd say about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, that tower of my faith just began to completely crumble, because I couldn't keep it up anymore. And that was distressing and relieving all at the same time, because I've been trying so hard to keep it up, trying so hard to make sure that tower didn't fall. But I think it needed to. Now, looking back, I'm so glad that it did. But it was a very painful and exciting time all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Redefining a fundamental piece of, our belief around our existence.
Yeah. Who am I now? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who am I now without that?
Oh, yeah. And Teresa, that was the fundamental question, is who am I without my religious beliefs? Who am I? And even to this day, I'd say I'm still trying to figure that out, because I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know more pieces now than I did at the time, but I don't know exactly who I am, and that's maybe the beauty of the journey for me has been, I don't have to know,
Right.
I don't have to have this all figured out. And that's sort of a paradigm shift for me, because all
Wow.
my life I
Yeah.
was taught this is the truth, the truth, and you can be confident in knowing the truth. And now I'm like, I have no idea what the truth is. And I feel pretty good about that. I actually love the idea that I don't have to know and I don't have to figure it out,
Yeah.
because it keeps me curious. It keeps me as an explorer. I get to explore and I get to listen to other perspectives and hear other people's opinions about things, and I don't dismiss them immediately. There's still part of me, I think, that wants to think that I know the truth and that I've got it all figured out in certain areas of my life. And then I have to do a little bit of a self check and say, wait a minute, John, just sit with this for a moment. I think maybe you need to rethink that, that maybe you don't know, and just be curious and open and explore and entertain the possibility that there's something out there that you don't have any clue about right now, and that's just been so freeing. It's almost like it makes this life journey, it expands it so much. It's like this,
Yes.
like deep space exploration, like Star Trek. It's like I'm going out into the unknown, and I have no idea what I'm going to find. And it's such a fun adventure. Because my wife and I would love to travel, and it used to be like, if you travel, it's because you're a missionary and you're trying to get people to understand and believe what you believe. And now I'm like, why would I do that? I love to travel and I love to see other cultures and people and just learn something new and something unique and different. And it's not about me. It's about this big world that has so much diversity and interesting people and different thought processes. And I can't imagine myself going and telling anybody anything of any value, at this point. It's just, I want to learn. So anyway.
Oh, yeah. We all have so much to learn from each other, right? If we just allow the space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what was coming to me when you were talking about exploring, adventuring? What do you think guides you, that inner knowing? Like, how do you decide to go like this way versus this way or that way?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And again, I don't know that I have a solid, well-defined answer, other than to say, I think I've learned to sit with myself more, to sit with my own body, my own thoughts, my feelings. I guess I would say that I try to just be aware or notice all those aspects. And it's too much for me to synthesize, all the time. But listening to my thoughts, listening to maybe the body of knowledge that I have in my head, the feelings that I have, my gut, all of this stuff, being aware of it, sitting with it, and then just trying to integrate that to some degree, allowing it to just unfold, and in some sort of intuition that says, this might be the right next step, and it's not about right or wrong. And that's another thing that's been hard for me is taking out right and wrong choices. It's more about what's right for me in the moment.
Right.
And there might be something that's maybe even more right for me, and I'm not aware of it yet. But in the moment, I know that this is probably the best direction for me to go now. Among many other good options, there's other options that I could have chosen that would have been as good, perhaps, maybe even better. But just taking that intuition, that deep knowing that I'm going to be okay no matter what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's not going to be catastrophic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's no God. Well, I will say it this way. For me, there's no one up there looking down, just kind of going, is he going to make the right choice or the wrong choice? And if he makes the wrong choice, I'm going to punish him. If he makes the right choice, I'm going to bless him,
Yeah.
and kind of removing that framework from my mind gives me some peace that I take this next step and it might be disastrous, who knows, but it might be disastrous in a way that causes me to grow or learn something new.
Right.
And it's not going to be catastrophic for me. And I don't have to judge myself. I don't have to worry about the judgments of others. The only people I really have to consider are the people that my choices directly affect. Well, usually it's my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's just been nice to freely be able to listen to that intuition, take the next step, and see what happens. And if I need to back up and go another direction, that's okay. It doesn't constitute the end of the world for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that's coming to mind through this whole conversation is the release of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said it in multiple ways, and it just, really rings true for me too. I've had some similar experiences. I've been in a space where I exercised religious judgment and judged myself in the process and others. And then in my business as a trial attorney, I judge things all the time. And I'm working like you are to take the judgment piece, at least not let that come out of my work arena and have it color everything else that I do, so that I can just experience life as it comes. And as these are lessons, challenges to make me better or to help me grow. But just fascinating when you remove the overarching, I am judged for everything I do, whether that's a spiritual concept or just from other people. Take that off, man. What a weight. And then get the pleasure of releasing it from yourself to putting your own judgment on everybody else. It's a really beautiful thing, John. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, that word judgment has been a difficult one for me to really figure out how to navigate that, because I think we all judge things.
Sure.
But I think that for me, it's been more about learning how to discern things or to evaluate good, better, best, and not so much putting a stamp of judgment of like, this is bad or evil. Of course, and I think there are still things that I do that with.
Sure.
And I feel pretty comfortable with that. But it's just discernment is a much better way for me to formulate judgment, because then I'm not having to condemn anyone or anything as much, including myself.
Tell us more about what discernment means to you.
Again, it's a word that I use a lot that I don't have a fully established definition.
Sure.
But it's more about, like I said before, of just listening to all the different pieces of my experience, my body, my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences, my knowledge, all of these things, and just seeing what would be a most beneficial direction to go or thought to have, about something, rather than having to put it in black and white categories of this is wrong, this is right. I condemn this and I embrace this. And so discernment to me, just the way I understand it, is really just trying to integrate and assimilate all of the different pieces. And, some pieces are not worth looking at really for me, I mean, not look at them, but not worthy of holding on to. Some of them I can just let go of. And knowing which of those pieces are going to serve me well and which of those pieces are not going to serve me well, and letting go of the ones that don't, and embracing or moving down the path toward the things that do serve me well. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does.
No, I think it absolutely does. I mean, the way I'm hearing you is I don't snap to a decision or a judgment. I give it space to consider different potential, facts and outcomes, etc. Instead of just in the moment, I know right and wrong, and this is it. So,
yeah.
Also, let me ask you this: energetically, when you're exercising judgment, when you're judging others or situations versus exercising discernment, what's the energetic difference to you?
It's pretty significant, I think, because, and I catch myself being in a judgmental place all the time, right?
Me too.
This is not something that's gone, right? So, but I feel it in my body, as it's almost like I inflate. I see myself as much better, bigger, higher, more enlightened, so to speak, than this other person. And it's sort of this, I hate to say pride, because I don't think pride is as evil as I used to think it was, but it is a place of self-importance, self-inflation, which is to me kind of a self-deception, because it assumes that somehow I've got something better than someone else does, or I've figured something out more precisely than someone else. It's sort of this really inflating and pushing down also someone else. It really is this I'm better than you type of feel. And it's hard for me to articulate or verbalize exactly how that feels in my body, but it's this expansive, bigger, floating, like up into the air, high and lofty experience. And when it's discerning, it's more of a connecting experience. I can draw toward someone and almost, not to make it too weird, but it's almost like we kind of mesh, we kind of come together, and now we're together on this journey, and we're in this boat together on these waves, and we're just kind of almost like intellectually or emotionally cuddling here. And we're looking at the world around us, and we're going, oh, wow, this is very interesting. Let's look at this together. And boy, you see things I don't see, and I see some things that maybe you're not seeing, and we can kind of help each other in this. It's less about inflating, and it's more about opening and warming and softening and being close and drawing toward, rather than getting farther away by being superior.
Beautiful.
If that makes sense.
Oh, it's beautiful, John. I got tears in my eyes. It was really lovely. Thank you. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yay.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, at the core, interrelated, and we forget. And we may not all parts are the same. And so there can be those differences like you're talking about, but we can still have connection and not view someone else as the other, with
exactly
walls and all that. Yeah.
I love that, the other terminology. I hear that quite a bit nowadays in, othering people or seeing the other. Makes me think of Lost for some reason, the others, and it's like these people that we don't understand. We can't figure out their world because it doesn't make sense to us. And so we put them in this category that now we just dismiss so much about them. And I used to do that with the LGBTQ community. I think that was my way of seeing that world, is they're others. They're people that don't matter to me. And so now, which is beautiful, I can see that they're just like me.
Yes.
They're so much like me, but but yet just have different experiences and different things that have meaning to them. And I can celebrate that now. I don't have to see them as others. I can see them as just part of me who enjoys different aspects of life that I don't see as clearly as they do. And so it's so nice to not have to other people anymore.
I'm curious.
Even though I do it a lot sometimes, and I try not to, but I do.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because I do go back there, but I'm moving along my path to recognize when I'm doing it, and either pause before I proceed, or I will give it some thought and more consideration after the moment. I prefer to pause while it's happening, but sometimes it comes a little bit later after I've kind of gauged. But we're human.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, we're so complex. Yeah. So I'm curious, John, when you are reflective, about something you said, didn't do, didn't say, and there is an awareness within you that you would like to engage differently in the future. Like, how do you talk to yourself about that? What's the conversation? There are words you use. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think I really just try speaking to myself. There's something that Brene Brown said a long time ago that really resonated with, and she said, when you talk to yourself like you would talk to your children. And that's always been sort of a framework of how do I talk to myself, and talking to myself with compassion, with love and acceptance and encouragement. And that's not a natural state for me. My natural state is to belittle myself or to ridicule my behaviors or my thoughts or my feelings or, whatever it is I'm experiencing. So really just trying to slow down. I think that's the one thing that I'm trying to learn is to slow down and listen and sit with myself. And then the self-talk can just be inviting and opening and accepting, and to say, John, I love you, and you're going to be okay. And this is just one more thing to learn about, and just kind of comfort myself throughout the process. That's the thing I'm still working on. And I haven't mastered that by any means, but the self-talk is really, it's interesting to me because I can't imagine, and I have done it before, but I regret it, is I don't generally talk to my kids demeaning, and I don't generally say, harsh things, but why am I less worthy of that, and I think it goes back to that idea that I've always thought of myself as being bad or evil or wicked or something. And so it was really easy for me to just be harsh on myself. And so learning, no, I have value. I have worth. I'm lovable and loved by others and by myself. And to be able to invite myself into a space of compassion and acceptance and talk to myself in that way, like I would like to talk to my clients or my children or, people in my life. And I think that gives me the space to be able to open up and learn and explore and be willing to see things differently than if I were just to shame myself and put myself down. And that just closes me off to all other avenues of possibility. I hope that's answering your question. I'm not sure if it is.
Yeah, very much so. I know that it's a necessary part of our growth is changing the voice inside of us, how we speak to ourselves, for sure. it's hard to stay on the journey when we continue to just beat ourselves up all the time. So, yeah, for me, the word that I use that's helpful, that came really clear to me, and maybe it was when I came out and saw you and Christine a few years ago. I can't remember. Is that when I did my vision quest? Do you remember? It was. Okay.
Yeah. Was that in Sedona?
It was. Yeah. But for me, that word is grace, giving myself grace. Like, I am human. I am messy. and I am motivated. I am motivated. But it is really like an awareness that I only know what I know right now. And can I make the best, healthiest decision for myself in this moment? And it is the best I can do in that moment. And I am not bad. Do I harm others? I do, but I am not bad. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I had a mantra for working on that this reminded me of, because he used a couple of words from it. And I haven't thought about it in a couple of years now, but I am lovable, loved, and loving so completely. And it was helpful. Yeah. But I still, even just last night, I woke up in the middle of the night remembering, something I had done in the past that wasn't kind or wise. And just, the beginning of it was, God, Walker, and I started to go down that path. But what was cool was I caught myself, and recognized, and instead of just stuffing it down, I worked on getting that to just let it go. So lots of work, right? That journey.
Yeah. Forever.
Yes.
Yeah. Forever. Oh,
it is.
We could probably have 10 episodes on how we talk to ourselves in the nighttime.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, John, I so appreciate your time and vulnerability, willingness to share this part of your journey. And, as best as you are aware how you experience things now, I think it's just so helpful for us to have the opportunity to keep learning from each other, because we just don't know what about our story touches somebody else and allows them the opportunity for more freedom, peace, joy. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you both for allowing me to be a part of this journey you guys are on. And it's been so enjoyable to talk with you. And I look forward to seeing how things go with all of this. This is beautiful. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.